Hey, I just wanted to come on today. I've been meaning for a while, but I finally had some time to do it. And I want to talk about where I got my own boundary standards and expectations. Um, I just think it's important. It's something that people don't talk about, but like, where did you get them from? Right. So I wanted to talk about where I got my own. And it might seem a little funny, but it's actually really worked well for me at keeping me and my relationships at a high vibration. And mine actually came from the novels I read as a young child. And I read a lot of romance novels. So I want to start off by talking about right now, people are talking about divestment in the Black women empowerment space. I didn't realize I was in the Black women empowerment space. I just know I was talking to Black women about the spiritual powers and gifts they had. But apparently I'm in it because when you're focusing on Black women and empowering them, and I'm empowering them spiritually as to the power that holds and gives them as much as possible, that we are actually quite powerful, which is why they like to energy harvest off of us a lot. But yeah, I'm in the space. And in the space, you're talking about dating. And I would say there's divestment. And I'm going to give you my definition of it, the more politically correct definition. The more politically correct definition, I think that should be used versus others. There's interracial dating and then there's sovereignty. And I want to actually talk about that first. And then I'm going to get into where my standards, boundaries, and expectations came from because they're all related. So right now in the Black women empowerment, it all is going back to finding for yourself. So interracial dating, they also call swirling. I don't call it swirling because I just don't like that name, but I date interracially and I always have. Because when I grew up on the West Coast. The West Coast is very interracial and very integrated. 2, the first boys who told me they liked me were white boys. And then the second group were Mexican boys because I lived in Las Vegas. And then the third group were Black boys. So I always grew up going, well, yeah, someone likes me. Like not everyone has to like you, but there are people who desire me as a mate or a wife. And they were serious about it, right? Like asking me out, taking me out. So, yeah, so I've always dated interracially, and on the West Coast, that's a big thing. I live in Virginia now, and I found out that can be a very big deal for some Black women, depending on how intrinsically involved in the community they are and how much they care about the perception of their Black family members who can be really against it. Now, I had my dad say stuff like, oh, if you bring a white man home, da-da-da-da-da, but I didn't care, right? Because my dad did his work as far as showing me what a 2-parent household led by an authoritative man looks like, which is good because now that's imprinted on me. But I didn't care what he thought because I was like, I'm not bringing home anyone like you. So, I mean, like, whatever. I'm going to bring home the best person. And so I've always been that. But then there's divestment. I'm not a divester, although I do understand the movement, what it's for. And I would define divestment, and I think this should really be picked up because it's a little bit, it can't be used against them. Divestment in general as a term means removing your investment from a certain group that does no longer serves you or your interests. And I would define divestment as Black women who are removing their intrinsic automatic investment in the Black community and in Black men, and only investing in what serves them. And it can't, so in some ways it's like extreme where they don't want anything to do with the Black community. In other ways, I just think you should, if it's just removing your investment to whatever doesn't serve you, it can be anything. However, they do talk about some of the toxic things in the Black community. I'm not a divester, but I understand that people who are really entrenched in the Black community, there were some toxic behaviors that they took on. I saw some of these behaviors, but I just didn't care, or they can say what they want, or they can call me an Oreo, or say I talk white, and I didn't care. Like, okay, so, and I'm not changing. I am what I am. I sound like what I sound like. I don't care what you think. But other people do care, right? And I do have sympathy for those who did care. And there were other things they were told that no one wants you, no one desires you. And I find that really sad, that because they were so intrinsically linked with it, that they believed it. But I think a better term is it's just removing all automatic and undying investment in anything community or people or group of men who do not serve you, and focusing on yourself, which actually goes into sovereignty. And I guess I've always been sovereign because I'll just say this. I've never done anything that didn't benefit me. And my mom always called me selfish, and I never cared. I was like, yeah, and I'm happy. Like, what's your problem? And my mom is very unselfish, and she's super unhappy, right? So it was never, I was called this, and I'm a Pisces too. And I think Pisces are general, like we do our own thing. But so I was always sovereign, which is just like your sovereignty is the most important. So I guess I was always that. And so we're talking about these conversations. It's like vet men, not vet men, vet all men. It doesn't matter what men you're vetting. But the thing is, it's like, what's your standards, boundaries, and expectations? And I want to talk to you about the novels I read and I absolutely loved versus which I actually read historical romance novels. So my mom like gave me a book when I was 10, which is sort of funny because I'm reading all these sex scenes and I'm liking them. But I'm like, yeah, whatever. I kept that to myself. So it was funny. She just handed them to me. And I just liked historical romance novels. And these would be set in England, right? And like the 1700s, 1600s, all that. And it was funny because it's not my culture, but I'm reading it and I liked it. I just thought it was really romantic. So there was always something in me from a very young age that cultivated very romantic ideals of love and marriage. And that in these novels, it'd be very chivalrous. It'd be like, I have to do right by my woman. It would be like, I'm playing around, but I met the right woman. And now I know that, or it's, I need to get married. Or another thing would be like, oh, there's a ball. And I really liked the ideas of the soft life, like even when I was a kid. So I really liked how it was just balls and parties and going to social scene and social circuit. So, I mean, that was like me too. Cause like, you guys know, I'm all about passive income, which I have. And I'm like, yeah, I've always been about that. So just reading these novels, it's very romantic. It's fun. And reading about like that soft life and just, you're really just worried about social and being pretty and watercoloring. And I'm naturally a social person too. So it just worked for me. I was like, yeah, this is the reality I want to create. And in so many ways I created it. But the other themes would be like, oh, there's a ballroom full of women and they're competing for a man's eyes and a man's hands. And then there's wallflowers who don't get chosen, but they're not as pretty as the one. But the pretty one actually has a lot of problems. But then the one that doesn't, or, maybe there's a really smart one and she really sticks out. And I actually resonated with that because I always stuck out from the crowd I was in because I was just a little bit more, I don't know. My older brother calls it cerebral. I didn't care what the group thought. I care what I thought. And I had an intellectual capacity to be. So I always felt a little out of place, especially growing up in a working class, lower income neighborhood. So I'd always just be like, I don't think that makes sense. And that's stupid. Like stupid was the word like I always used, which funny. I don't like anyone calling me that, but whatever. I'm over that now. But when I was younger, so it would be all these themes that like I would resonate, like, being an outcast maybe, or just not an outcast, but just like not really gelling. But in my case, not caring to and not going to, I'm not changing who I am to fit anybody. And so it's funny. So I saw all these themes of chivalry, taking care, competing for men, but beautifying yourself, having fun with beauty, um, being social, being an asset, and learning what they thought was like, if you're social climbing, if you're trying to marry a duke or a viscount and you're a lady, how did you do that? How big a deal was it? So it's really interesting about the class social dynamics, but the hint was marriage. The strain was building assets and bringing assets. It was upper class. It was just really interesting stuff. But I came away with like very chivalrous ideas of how a man should want marriage as the ultimate goal. And that's it. And how if you have marriage outside of marriage, it was like a big thing in these books. Like you get excommunicated for having a kid outside of marriage. So that was my imprinting. So I read this when I was a child growing into an adult, and I still read them when I have time. But now I really do space operas where it's just like a badass galaxy commander woman is like, saving the galaxy, which I identify with. But so that's where my standards and boundaries and expectations. And then it was funny because when I got in college, all of a sudden Zane came out with her books, right? And there was a lot more Black female authors who were on the scene. And I started reading their books. And even though, like Terry McMillan, Waiting to Exhale, that came out in the 90s, and I read that book too. And it was just so different. I grew up on historical romance, and that's imprinted. It was fun, frivolous, but not so frivolous. You actually understand a lot of social current and under elements of the upper class and what you bring to a marriage and whatnot. But like the whole aspect and how important it was. And then I started reading Black novels. And then all of a sudden it was like, to me, it was sex. I didn't see marriage anywhere. It was sex. It was sex with the neighbors. Zane had one character having sex with like 3 people. It was just sexualized. It was all sex. And then I come from this where it was about marriage. And if sex happened before marriage, oh my God, that was a big deal. And you absolutely need to marry them. And this is the whole centerpiece of the entire existence of the scene I'm reading about over and over again throughout the same trope. To sex, not one mention of marriage, a lot of sex. And I was just like, okay, I read it a little bit, but then I was like, I can't, this isn't what I want. And anything you read and take in is part of your programming. And the more you ingest it, the more you're accepting it. And I was just like, no. And what I didn't realize at the time is that I was taking a lot of the tropes and themes about how important marriage and relationships were from the greater white society, England, but, a lot of white Americans sort of cater to that notion. But that's what I was accepting as the reality I wanted. That's what I was choosing. And then I watched it with Zane and Terry McMillan and the other novelists. I was rejecting what they knew, which was just a lot of sex. Like there's no one mentioned marriage at all in these books, like at all. Maybe they did later, but like, it was just all sexual activity and playing with each other, and no one was getting serious. They did not center marriage at the center of everything. And so I read it, but there was a point at which I rejected it. I just didn't want to keep ingesting that because I was just like, no one's talking about marriage. And I didn't realize that that was just a reflection of what was going on in the 90s and the early 2000s of the Black community. Because my experience with Black community is that like, I only messed with people who messed with me. So if you had a problem with the way I talked, the way I dressed, the way I sounded, I did not care because I didn't give an F about you. You didn't give an F about me. I was cool. And I only dealt with the Black community who was like me, like-minded, cared about the same things. And so that's it. So I didn't have any deep-seated hatred or resentment because I was only messing with people who were on my vibration, my intellectual level, or personality level, right? That's it. So I didn't have any deep-seated. And so now coming into the BWE space, all this stuff is coming out, like why divestment's the thing, and interracial dating is like a big deal for some people. And I'm learning about that other side of people who are intrinsically linked and let the identity of the community and some of their negative traits dictate their actions. I've just always been so on my own, beating my own drum that like I just didn't realize that it really held them down and like those soft change of programming and social conditioning to do it. And that's why I'm sharing this. And so I rejected that. And why I'm saying this is that like right now we all get to choose where your standards and boundaries from. But what I would say is like in our community here in America over the last 70 years, the reflection of it isn't marriage centered. So I would say that like you're going to have to get your own start reading those books of like marriage. And I will just say this: I have been married, I'm dating other men, and I've been proposed to since I've been divorced. And I just had a marriage conversation with another guy, and I've had a marriage conversation with another guy I'm dating. So, like, at least your girls don't get married again, okay? Like within a year, I'm pretty sure. So, you know, you can say get married and then talk about it. But I will say this: I don't need divestment because I had these standards and boundaries and expectations. That's something that's coined by Cynthia G, who's doing an amazing job right now in the BWE space of explaining like Black women needing to open their options up. And she says some things that a lot of people aren't going to like, which I understand, but she is a major force to reckon with. She did use these terms, and I have to agree with her, because the reason I don't need to be a divester or da-da-da-da-da is because I only mess with people who are good for me. So I don't have to only date one race or another race. I'm only dating those who show that they're good for me, right? So the reason I don't need that movement is because if you're not good for me with what I expect in a partner, the standards I expect to minimally meet, and you don't, you know, respect the boundaries of which I'm, you don't yell at me, you don't curse at me, you better consider marriage the most important thing, right? If you just want to hit it and quit it and that's all you're about, that's fine, but I'm not taking you seriously, right? Then you don't need it. And so I actually really resonate with her on this one, because that's going to protect you more. And because of that, it don't matter what race or person I get with, those are the minimum standards that I need in order to view you as a viable mate. So I just wanted to share mine. So basically the answer is historical romance novels. And then when I started reading the Black romance novels by Zane and the others, I didn't like it anymore. I was like, I want marriage-centered romance, not sex-centered romance. To me, and I grew up in a 2-parent household. So like, and then I knew that so many girls were, getting pregnant out of wedlock and seeing how hard their lives are. And I was just like, I don't want that. That sounds terrible. I mean, good for the women who do it, but I'm a Pisces. We're lazy. So we don't, I ain't doing all that work by myself. Are you crazy? Are you crazy? And even now I'm divorced from my ex-husband, but he's a very active father. So right now he's calling me because we have to meet up. And like, he took my daughter to like their parents' house. And even then, even though we're divorced, like actually it's not a bad life for me, because I chose a man who centered family and marriage. So even though it didn't work out for us, like our commitment to the child is just so big that it's like, I get my breaks, he gets his breaks, and it's mutually beneficial. And my baby's still happy. Like we had a birthday party last week. I'll post this on my Facebook page for anyone who wants to see it. And like, he came and did the tacos while I got like all the party planning, and we worked together, right? Because my daughter likes it when we're together. We don't do it often, but maybe once every 2 months, we're in the same area. We go out to eat together we're not a family, but as her and her mom and dad, because she does enjoy when we're together versus separate. But we're generally friends after that. So she's not like traumatized or anything. So, and so now I'm looking at marriage, and it's funny because I just had a conversation with one of the guys who proposed to me, but I told him he had to make more money. Well, lo and behold, he made more money. Well, that's awesome. So then I was like, well, I like this, but I need, we were talking about something serious today. And it was just like, well, okay, so you say you want to marry me. You're always talking about this, but let me talk about the thing I need. I like the fact that your emotional growth, your spiritual growth has like really expanded in the last 3 years that we've known each other. I love the fact that you make more money now. Now it's literally what I told you needed to make. It's like 5K off that a year, which is amazing, right? Which is more than me when you do my adjusted gross income. So I make money, but like adjusted gross income as a business owner is like how much you make after expenses, right? And then I was like, the last thing I need is that, I grew up with that mantle of a man is like, and this can be positive. So if you have a problem with this, I understand, but there's healthy ways of doing this. And I want to extrapolate what I saw from my dad, who was the provider who woke up every morning to take care of us. I want to extrapolate that because he was a very, very emotionally unavailable person. I want to extrapolate that to like, well, I was telling him like, listen, all this is great, but this last part is I would like a man who is ready to take on the mantle of me and my children, and whoever comes is completely under his protection and guidance. Meaning it doesn't matter what happens. This person says he got us and he will do it all. and da da da. And look, you're great, but that's the mantle that like I would want to see if we ever did this, even though all these other transformations that have happened with you have been great. And it was sort of a sensitive conversation. And I was just like, and I'm not asking you to do this. I'm just telling you, this is what I need. I'm not settling for anything less because I know it's healthy when you have a man at the household who is like, no, you kids, the wife, they are mine to protect at all costs. I will always make sure that they're okay. That is an umbrella of protection and provision that I absolutely demand. And even my ex-husband was really good at that. Now, there's a time that we started to break away because we both made mistakes. Now that I look back, I'm like, ooh, well, I did this too, and he did this. But even he was like that, which is why even though we're divorced, the kids are doing. So like I said, it goes back to these are my standards, boundaries, and expectations. Very big on that marriage front. And so I'm talking to him and I was just like, and it's sort of a sensitive subject. Most women wouldn't bring this up, but I'm just like, listen, I don't have the energy to lie. Like, I just don't. Like, it takes so much. So I'm like, look, I'm just going to tell you something. I need that full mantle. That is what I grew up in. My dad was the leader. He did this. His family, as he told my mom, and he told me, he told my mom, he's like, I told your mama this. I'm going to work. You make sure they fed, they clothed, and they go to school. Okay, sit, right? Like, that's it. And I saw him wake up every day at 4, 2, 3 o'clock in the morning to make sure it happened. In my mind, that is what a man should do. So also, it does also come from just seeing that, even though like I think my dad could have done way better. That also comes from that, right? Like seeing that action in play, a man doing everything. And I just brought this up, like, yeah, complete mantle of your protection and provision. That's healthy. Like, it can be a very healthy thing. And spiritually, like, the role of the man is in this physical world. He's the physical person to make the physical shelter. While us, we do our spiritual thing. I can make sure he gets a high paying job, which I did. Thank you very much with my spiritual means and manifestation powers, right? I make sure the kids are emotionally stable. I check in to make sure that everything on task and we're on mission and we're on purpose, right? And we're expanding to the biggest people that we're meant to be, right? But you need to take care of the physical while I do the spiritual so I can spend that time, right? And be emotionally mature, emotionally available, work on my emotional maturity and availability, which helps my daughter, which helps you, which helps everyone I interact with. It makes me more powerful the more I can focus on that spiritual evolution, right? And that's what they were made for. And it was funny just having, he was like, most people don't say this, but I guess you just came right out. And I was just like, he's like, I'm not quite ready for that level. And da 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 da. And it was like a really good conversation. Hi, Nicole. So all of a sudden it was interesting that we're talking about having these marriage conversations. I'm actually dating another guy, and I don't know if the one guy watches this, so don't get your feelings. You already know I'm dating. I'm having a conversation with another man, and this one's older, and he's like, he has that mantle, like he's ready, like he's like, yeah, I need a wife and I need some kids that I need to provide for. He's an older man, but whatever. And it's just very interesting. So I'm having marriage conversations with him, and like the marriage conversations, like, I mean, if that's what it is, it needs to be coming up. And if they're not about that, let them go. I am super aggressive about, like, I have different roles when I online date. It's like either I'm taking you seriously or I'm not. If I'm not, like, whatever, and like just anybody I'll talk to, to go on a date or whatever. But if you are, it's like this marriage stuff should be coming up pretty soon. So, and so I'm looking at him, and older gent, established, but ready. Like, hey, I got this. I plan our dates. I do everything. Da 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 da. Now he's 16 years older. I'm 40, so he's 56. But yeah. And I also wanted to talk about that as well, because sometimes in this world, in order to get the men with that mentality, sometimes they might be a little older. Just put it out there. I'm okay, because the kind of person I am, my intellectual, financial, spiritual, and emotional equal does turn out to be older men who have finally found themselves, because I have a lot of confidence in myself because I know who I am and what I'm here for. You don't really find men who are able to get to that level. So I do find that I've been dating consistently 50 to 56-year-old men, like for the last, year or so. Oh, thank you, Nicole. So for the last years, but like I said, what I want is what I want. What package it comes in is another thing. So if I didn't have those are my standards, that's what I want. That's what I'm going to get. Now, as I'm dating, what package is it coming in, right? This happens to be a German, older Caucasian man, okay? And the one before, who was the priest, was also, and he was waspy. And then, so whatever. But the thing is, it's like I know what I want and I'm sticking to it, and I'm allowing the universe to bring it to me in whatever package it comes in. Now, I'm actually going to do a video on, I find that I've been pretty okay in relationships because I sort of stick to the character of the person I want versus the looks, and I'm allowing different looks to come in that fit what I want. And then I actually grow to like, they might not be, honestly, one of the guys I'm dating, I'm like, he was not attractive at first, but now I think he's great because he's pretty much everything I want. So I'm like, yeah, he's cute now. So I was actually going to do another video on women allowing themselves to find the character of the person they want. And if it comes in a different package, giving it a little bit of time to see, because women, we get like this blaze over our eyes. We're getting everything we want, where someone who is not attractive becomes super attractive. Like, because I have some people I fell for that were ugly, but man, by the end, when they gave me everything I wanted and everything I needed, emotionally, financially, whatever, like I honestly did not care. And the older we get, I think we need to start looking at that, because it's okay to have stringent requirements, but you also need to allow the universe to bring it in maybe a different package, maybe older, maybe a different race than you thought. And I actually am finding out that in our community, being shallow and closed-minded is the biggest reason we're doing so bad on the marriage market. Okay, because my last ex-husband, he was if I was saying a scale of 1 to 10, I would say my ex-husband's like a 6, sometimes a 7, honestly. But that was okay, because when I was in love with him, he was providing everything I needed. My love language is acts of service, and if I needed anything, he was right there. Literally helped me flip a house. Okay, so like, and we were just dating at that time. Talk about, for me, that was like, wow. Every time he helped me, like my love, like just my heart chakra just opened towards him, and yeah, and maybe not the cutest at first, but man, you really start to like them when they give you what you need. And that's the conversation, because a lot of you guys are stuck on the infantile stage, and it is about looks versus character. And that's, I mean, is that work? If it's working for you, fine. But I know I'm consistently doing okay, and I've always been doing okay in the relationship stage, in like going through the process and getting to the next stage with really good guys, because I'm looking at that first, right? So like I said, I have my standards and boundaries and expectations, and it comes in this package. Okay, maybe a little older, but we had a health discussion. He's healthy. Down with COVID this weekend, but I'm doing my healing on the side. But whatever, right? I allowed that to come because I just had my standards and what I want and my expectations met. It just came in a different package, and I'm allowing that. And I would say, I would give out to women, like, allow the package to come for you, because there's a lot of happiness in getting everything you want. And maybe the looks at first aren't what you wanted because it's not the trophy person, but like allowing your standards and expectations to lead you versus the superficial, you really are happy, and you honestly start to not care. Now, I don't know. I think men can not care about looks, so I think it's a lot harder for them to be like, she's such a great person, I don't care about looks. I think that takes time. But for women, it's like, yeah, well, you keep doing this and taking me here and doing this, and but like I don't know, like it doesn't take long. It takes like a week. Like, so let it take a week, girl. Especially when you get everything you want. So, and they're really spoiling you, because you'll meet a lot of guys, but then there's certain ones who like really want you and really willing to put on the work. And so, and I also want to tell a story, because I've always been pretty open-minded in character over looks. Like I said, the Black community just sort of treated me like a red-haired stepchild. And I was just like, so whatever, I only deal with the people who deal with me. That's why I'm always really big on my platform, saying the people who are attracted to me, that's how I deal with. I'm not chasing after you nor sniffing up anybody's ass, right? You like me though? Hey, we got a chance, right? And I remember when I was in college, and I had me and my girlfriend had boyfriends, and the boyfriends were back east, and so we'd hang out all together. And I remember that she was like, well, he treats me really well. And this is before I really knew him. She was like, well, he treats me really well, but his looks. And he had like a stub arm, and he wasn't like the most attractive, but, attractive enough in the face, but just, he had a half of arm and, a bit of a disability. And I remember this conversation. I can't believe I was having it, because my my boyfriend at the time was like, he was this sort of elevated status. He was like the president of a national organization, and he was like, if I said like on a scale of looks, he's like a 6, and I could be anywhere from like 6 to 8, depending on the day, how I'm dressed up, weight. But I can get up there, sometimes push a 9, like in my early years, and so. I remember having that conversation. She was like, "Well, I just don't like his looks," and she's another Black woman, and we were 24, and I was like, "What?" Because my man, he was treating me really well. I was like, he treats me so great. What are you doing? We're the cute ones in the relationship. We're cute, okay? And I remember saying this. I was like, we are going to take our ugly boyfriends and they're going to treat us like queens, which they were doing. Because like I said, I was imprinted. Like you're not getting around me if you're trying to breadcrumb me. That's just not happening. I'm imprinted with what I wanted from all those years reading those romance novels. So say what you want. I still like those romance novels and I still read them. And I remember going, our ugly boyfriends are going to take us and treat us like queens. What are you doing? Are you crazy? And they're married still today. I whipped that girl into shape so fast. And I was talking to my spirit guides on the dating, and they were saying, like, you really need to hold a workshop for the women on because they are being really superficial. And they're getting what they want, but it doesn't come in their package, and they're rejecting it, even though it will make them deliriously happy. So watching my friend who's been married, she's 8, how many years now? 6 plus 4, 16 years of marriage, 2 kids. The guy, he was making 6 figures like way before, right? Everybody was talking about 6-figure income. So that was like 10 years ago. So it's only even grown since then. And hi, Mina. Oh, sorry, Minara. Sorry. Oh, that he was married. I mean, that happens. Like, I just don't get too emotionally invested in cord cut, so it's clean. So yeah, it's just a conversation of those were my boundary standards expectations. I hope that can help you. I'm not saying you have to read historical romance novels, because I read like a lot. Like, it's just like, I don't know. I really like reading. So, and I had my genre. But it's also an aspect of, when you have this, being open to what package it comes in, as long as you're really, really happy, right? So that's all I wanted to say. I hope that was all coherent and made sense to you guys about what I was trying to impart. Hopefully it helps or sparks something in you to really sort of, and I really call this for women. Well, you should be looks focused, not look centered, right? Like, it really should be, what do you want within the character and how they treat you and what you wanted to be treated like, and then follow what the looks. And so with the divestment and interracial dating, I just thought it was really interesting to go, hey, these are where my boundaries and standards came from, a very marriage-centric reading list and materials my whole life, and historical romances, which I really like. I like romance, right? Like, I love it. Like, and but also, when it does come to me, it kept coming in different packages in which I thought it would come. However, the person those fit that I was ideals that I thought were pretty elevated would make me happy, and they did make me happy and are making me happy, came in a certain package I wasn't expecting, but I wasn't going to throw it away for, a skin surface culture reasons, right? As long as the character was behind it. So, I'm going to end with that because I have phone calls coming in. I hope this was helpful. Everyone out there, take care. If you want, read romance novels, historical ones, not the Zane ones. The Zanes have their place, but like I said, if you read all marriage-centric materials, you're going to imprint that. If you read all sex-centric materials when it comes to relationships, you're going to be okay with that too. And like I said, I rejected it after a while because this is just disgusting. Like, I'm more than just a sexual, like, I'm more than just a sex doll for somebody. And if that's all they in these novels that you want to do, it just wasn't happening. And so, an FYI, for those standards and boundaries and expectations, some of the men I dated were Black with those, right? So it didn't even matter. I was just, this is what I want, my standards and expectations. And the boundary part is just like having the confidence to think you can get someone else, right? And if you need to, do yourself up and level up a little bit to get someone else, whatever. We can all level up. We can all, there's a wide, not everyone's going to like you, right? It's never been every guy likes me. There's so many other girls that they like. but I have enough guys that like me, right? And that's what it's about. And when you have confidence about, like, it's not every guy, but the ones that do, that's when it's good. And add a healthy dose of manifestation. So yeah, that's, I hope that all flowed in a logical pattern. I hope this helps spark something within you guys if you're finding yourself being stunted in some way. But just figure out where they come from and acknowledge if you don't have good ones, right? So this is the last part. If I look at all of my sisters and their marriages, they're horrible. Like I get, and my mom and dad, like horrible. I was telling my mom she should divorce my dad when I was 10. I'm like, yeah, way better. You can do way better. What are you doing? So I did not get it from my family members. So if you're getting it from your family members and they're not happy, well, like don't do it. Like don't fall into the trap. So when I was reading these historical romance novels, I decided that this is what I would like to aspire to. Like this is way more fun and lighthearted and a beautiful imagery of what I want to see myself in as far as relationships and getting married and having a family. So you can get them wherever you want. You can rebook some relationships, but just be mindful of what you want and how you picture yourself and what it's going to look like. And I've always just knew exactly what I do like, what I do want. And it just makes it really easy when I do find it, like not be so shallow that maybe if it's an older dude, oh, I'm just rejecting you out of like, no, man, as long as I'm happy, I'm happy. I honestly don't, as long as I am happy, I don't care. Like I said, looks, I swear, for women, you can come to love someone's looks. Like it is a beautiful, and honestly, that's probably evolution. That's why my line will always continue, because I have that evolutionary trait as a woman that when I'm being treated well and someone makes me feel good and they're happy and they're providing everything I need, my evolutionary gift and ability is to like, they become cuter, right? So picture all the men. So I've only dated men of character and substance because that's all my expectations and standards were. But I also let it come in different packages. And sometimes I did call them ugly. So don't take that the wrong way, because I still thought they were attractive. But like on first looks, they weren't like the fine guy that everyone wants, right? But they're the guy that made you super happy. And then all of a sudden they become super attractive to you. And like you would fight somebody over them in the looks department because you're so happy. It has to be an evolutionary trait that does tap in for women so that you do pick the best provider. And I think some of you guys haven't given that muscle a chance to flex. If you're happy, give the muscle a chance to flex. And then after a couple weeks, because it doesn't take long, they're still not attractive to you, let it go. But after a couple of weeks, they are starting to let that evolutionary gene take you further. That guarantees you and your lineage, when you have kids, they're also going to be able to find who is the best person to make them happy and provide for them. And the looks can be a secondary that becomes very attractive with that. It's evolution, man. And I'm so happy I have that trait in my real house. So I gotta get going. I gotta eat some. I made some. I love this duck. I made this. It's Thai basil crispy duck. I learned how to make it. It's super easy. So I just made some. It's delicious. I tasted it. I let it settle and cool a little bit, because when you let food cool a little bit, like the seasonings and flavor become better. So that's why I wanted to do this live. But now I'm hungry and I'm gonna go and do that. So hope this was helpful. And I have more coming. I'm glad I was able to get this out, and I hope it's very helpful just to open up about like this really sensitive things. And we're all coming from different places, and for you to choose where your place of what your expectations and boundaries and standards are, it's for you to choose where you get yours. I'm very happy with my romantic novels. I have a romantic bend to me, but it's always marriage centered, and that's helped me through. It's helping me through now. And it really gives me real clear guidance of exactly where I know exactly where I'm going, right? And when I read it, I was like, yeah, this is it. I don't want that other struggle love. But you choose what you want, right? And imprint it in your energy so you attract it. All right. Take care. I'm glad for everybody who came in. Bye.